What if I told you that one of the richest electronics entrepreneurs in the country once tied a piece of cloth around his stomach just to trick his body into thinking it had eaten? He owned no phone, no electricity, not even a proper school bag. People laughed at his dreams. They said poverty had already chosen his future, but they never saw what he was secretly building. This is the incredible story of Musa, the boy whose empty pockets built an empire. They said his pockets held nothing but wind, and for years they were right. Musa woke long before the sun, before the roosters even remembered to crow, inside a tiny mud shack where the cracked walls released yesterday's heat into the darkness. Every morning, before taking a single step outside, he wrapped an old piece of cloth tightly around his stomach, not because he was cold, because he was hungry. The cloth squeezed his empty stomach just enough to fool his body into believing it had eaten. It wasn't a trick that always worked, but it helped him survive one more day. Outside, the dry season had swallowed the village in golden dust. It settled on rooftops, on trees, on every path, and on the torn shoes that barely clung to Musa's feet. Sharp stones pierced through the thin soles as he walked toward school, but he never slowed down. His school bag wasn't really a school bag. It was an old rice sack tied together with worn-out string. Inside were 2 tiny pencil stubs and 1 notebook. He guarded that notebook like treasure because every page carried something more valuable than money. It carried his future. But what Musa did every night was something nobody, not even his own parents, knew about. Every night, after his parents finally drifted into exhausted sleep, Musa quietly lit a weak kerosene lamp. The small flame barely pushed back the darkness. He sat in front of an old wooden crate and unfolded several torn pages he had rescued from a rubbish pile near the market. They weren't storybooks. They were pages about electricity, circuits, wires, switches, machines. Most of the words were too difficult for him, but that didn't stop him. He copied every diagram, every symbol, every line. He didn't fully understand them yet, but he understood one thing: these pages were showing him a door into a life nobody believed a poor farmer's son could ever enter. Night after night, while the village slept, Musa quietly taught himself the language of machines. He had no teacher, no electricity, no internet, only determination. Then, just as hope began growing inside him, something reminded him how fragile his family's life really was. His mother's cough shattered the silence. It wasn't an ordinary cough anymore. Each one sounded heavier than the last. She struggled to breathe. Medicine could help her, but that medicine sat behind the glass shelves of a pharmacy in the city, far beyond anything his family could ever afford. Every evening his father returned home from another man's farmland with cracked hands and tired eyes. He worked from sunrise until sunset, yet somehow they were still poor. Musa watched everything: his mother's pain, his father's silent suffering, the empty cooking pot, the leaking roof, the hunger. He stored every painful memory deep inside himself, not as anger, but as fuel. Because inside the quiet village boy burned a dream that refused to die. He whispered to himself every night, "One day, I won't just repair broken radios, I'll repair broken lives." He had absolutely no idea how that dream would come true. But he made one promise to himself: no matter how empty his pockets became, he would never allow his mind to become empty too. Little did Musa know the very next morning would become one of the most painful days of his entire life. The next morning, Musa walked into school carrying the same old rice sack over his shoulder. He had no idea that before the first lesson even began, his dream would become the entire classroom's joke. The moment he stepped through the doorway, laughter echoed across the room. A boy named Deli climbed onto a bench so everyone could see him. He pointed at Musa and laughed. "Look, the great engineer has arrived." The classroom exploded with laughter. "The boy who wants to build machines can't even buy a proper school bag," another student shouted. "Maybe he'll build an airplane out of that rice sack." The laughter grew louder. Even students who had never mocked Musa before joined in, not because they hated him but because laughing with the crowd was easier than standing alone. Musa didn't say a single word. He quietly walked to his seat and lowered his head. His ears burned with embarrassment. His fingers tightened around his notebook. For a moment he wondered if they were right. Maybe dreams really did belong only to children born into rich families. Maybe poverty had already decided the rest of his life. But the day wasn't finished hurting him. After school, Musa walked through the crowded market carrying a small basket for his mother. An elderly woman wearing bright gold earrings spotted him. She smiled not with kindness but with mockery. "Musa," her voice was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "when will your father finally teach you that empty pockets cannot build big dreams?" The people around her laughed. Another man shook his head. "A poor farmer's son talking about engineering. Some dreams are simply too expensive." Their words followed Musa like shadows. He kept walking. He never looked back. but every sentence cut deeper than the one before. That evening, instead of going home, Musa wandered toward the river at the edge of the village. It was the only place where nobody expected anything from him. The water flowed quietly over smooth stones as the evening sun painted the surface with gold. There, sitting alone beneath an old tree, was Baba Jamiu, the retired village teacher, a man whose hair had turned completely white but whose eyes still carried the calmness of someone who understood life better than most. Without saying a word, the old man gently patted the stone beside him, almost as if he had been waiting for Musa all along. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the river. Finally, Baba Jamiu reached into the pocket of his faded Iqbada. He slowly pulled out a small brass-rimmed mirror. It was old, scratched. Its edges were worn by time. He placed it gently into Musa's hands. "Look into it," he said softly. Musa stared at his reflection. "I see a tired boy. I see dust. I see someone everyone laughs at." The old teacher smiled. "Look again." Musa frowned. "I don't understand." Baba Jamiu leaned closer. "I didn't ask what your face looks like, I asked what lives behind your eyes." Musa remained silent. Then Baba Jamiu spoke words Musa would never forget. "Every person who laughs at you throws another handful of dust onto this mirror. Their insults, their mockery, their disbelief, it is only dust." He gently wiped the mirror with the edge of his sleeve. Instantly, the reflection became brighter. "Dust cannot destroy a mirror," Baba Jamiu whispered. "It only hides what's already there." Then he looked directly into Musa's eyes. "The fire inside you has never disappeared. It has only been covered. The question is not whether people will throw dust, they always will. The real question is whether you will wipe it away every single day." Musa held the mirror tightly against his chest. For the first time since the laughter in the classroom, his heart became still. He finally understood something. He could not stop people from mocking him. He could not stop poverty. He could not stop hardship, but he could choose every single day to keep moving forward anyway. As the sun disappeared beyond the river, Musa made a promise to himself. He would never argue with those who doubted him. He would answer them with something far more powerful. His work, but keeping that promise, would cost him more than he could ever imagine. Musa left the river that evening with the old brass mirror in his pocket, but he also carried something far more valuable, a new belief. From that day forward, he stopped trying to prove people wrong. Instead, he decided to prove himself right. What he didn't know was that chasing his dream would demand more from him than he had ever imagined. The years that followed tested Musa in every possible way. Every morning at 5 o'clock, while the village still slept beneath the cool darkness, he woke before everyone else and walked to school. His torn shoe slapped against the dusty road. His stomach was often empty, but his mind was full of purpose. The school bell marked the beginning of his first job, learning. The second began the moment classes ended. Every afternoon, Musa hurried to a small roadside tea shop where he washed hundreds of greasy glasses until his fingers became soft and raw from the hot water. Steam rose into his face. Soap burned the tiny cuts on his hands. Yet he never complained. Every coin mattered. One afternoon, a well-dressed customer looked at a glass Musa had just washed. He frowned. "This is still dirty." Without another word, he threw the glass onto the ground. It shattered beside Musa's feet. The entire shop fell silent. Everyone waited to see how the poor boy would react. Musa slowly bent down, picked up every broken piece, looked at the customer, and quietly said, "I'm sorry, sir." Then he washed another glass. Not because he was weak, but because his dream was too important to be distracted by pride. That night, as he stared into the old brass mirror, Baba Jamiu's words echoed inside his mind. "Dust cannot destroy a mirror. Keep wiping it away." Those words became stronger than every insult he had ever heard. But washing glasses was only one part of his journey. Every Saturday and Sunday, while boys his age filled the football field with laughter, Musa walked in the opposite direction, toward the mechanic workshop at the edge of town. The owner was a quiet man named Sunday. He couldn't afford to pay Musa, so Musa asked for something better. "Teach me at first." Sunday simply nodded. No promises, no speeches. He handed Musa an old screwdriver. "Start by cleaning." For weeks, that was all Musa did. He swept the floor. He organized rusty tools. He carried heavy engines. He cleaned grease that stained his hands black. Many people would have quit, but Musa wasn't there for money. He was there for knowledge. Slowly, Sunday began explaining how machines worked, why wires carried power, why circuits failed, how tiny mistakes created big problems. Every lesson felt like another key unlocking a door Musa had dreamed about for years. He returned home every evening covered in engine oil. His clothes smelled of grease. His fingernails stayed black for days, but behind those tired eyes his dream was becoming clearer than ever. Then came the hardest battle of all, sleep. Every night, Musa fought to keep his eyes open beneath the weak glow of the kerosene lamp. His body begged for rest, but his future demanded one more page, one more lesson, one more diagram. He studied until the lamp burned out, then he slept for only a few hours before doing it all again. Day after day, week after week, month after month, years passed. His determination never changed. Every naira he earned from the tea shop disappeared into a cracked clay pot hidden beneath his sleeping mat. He never touched it, not for new clothes, not for better food, not even when hunger became unbearable, because Musa wasn't saving money, he was buying time. Finally, after years of sacrifice, the clay pot became heavy enough to change everything. One quiet morning, Musa stood in the market holding the keys to a tiny wooden kiosk. It wasn't much. The roof leaked. The walls leaned slightly. There was barely enough room for one chair and one table. But to Musa it looked bigger than any mansion. He carefully placed his small toolbox on the table, took one deep breath and hung a handwritten sign outside. Phone repairs. No one came on the first day, or the second, even the third. People walked past without stopping. Some smiled, others laughed. The poor farmer's son thinks he can repair phones now. Musa heard every word, but he remembered the mirror. He simply unlocked the shop again the next morning, and waited. Because sometimes the longest wait comes just before the biggest breakthrough. Little did Musa know the very first customer to walk through the tiny wooden door would change his life forever. That tiny wooden kiosk didn't look like much to anyone passing by, but within a few years, it would become the foundation of a business that changed Musa's life forever. The same people who laughed at his dreams would one day stand in line asking him for an opportunity. But that is a story for another day. If there's one lesson from Musa's journey, it's this: empty pockets don't decide your future, your daily discipline does.